It's early 1944, and you're a U.S. Marine trapped in the hellish jungles of Bougainville, where every step could be your last. The air is thick with humidity, the ground a tangled mess of roots and mud, and lurking in the shadows are Japanese bunkers, impenetrable fortresses that turn brave assaults into bloodbaths. How do you crack these unbreakable defenses? That's the question that haunted the men of the 3rd Marine Division, and it's the spark that ignited one of WW2's most audacious innovations. The Imperial Japanese Army, led by the cunning General Harukichi Hyakutake, had engineered a nightmare of overlapping kill zones. Their bunkers, built from massive coconut logs, packed earth, and sometimes concrete, were camouflaged masterpieces with tiny firing slits, just wide enough for a machine gun to unleash hell. Advancing Marines faced a wall of interlocking fire, shredding any hope of a breakthrough. Standard tactics? Forget them. Grenades bounced harmlessly off these beasts, and close-quarters charges meant certain death. Casualties piled up, morale cratered. What if there was no way out? But in this desperate deadlock, one man's wild idea would change everything. Stay tuned as we uncover the bamboo bombs that turned the tide. Structures, each assault yielding minimal tactical gains at a frightful human cost. The grim reality underscored a critical and immediate need for a novel, impactful engineering solution. A new method to penetrate these impervious Japanese defenses and break the deadly impasse. Amidst the brutal fighting on Bougainville, a singular figure emerged from the ranks, Private Jack Riley. He was not by any conventional measure a typical Marine infantryman. His approach to warfare, to the very mechanics of survival and conquest, sprang from a deeply personal and strikingly ancient wellspring of knowledge. Hailing from the industrial heartland of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Riley possessed a unique heritage distinct from his comrades. Before the global conflict erupted, Riley had spent countless hours honing an almost forgotten skill, the art of javelin throwing. This athletic prowess wasn't born from military training, but from the patient tutelage of his grandfather, a man who imparted the precise physics of trajectory, leverage, and velocity. This early specialized instruction granted Riley an exceptional understanding of projectile dynamics, a keen grasp of how to propel objects with accuracy and considerable force, a skill few could match, let alone appreciate in the modern United States Marine Corps. Within his unit, the 3rd Marine Raider Battalion, Riley had already cultivated a distinct and often troublesome identity. He was known for his sharp intellect and his unyielding skepticism towards what he considered stupid military doctrine. He openly challenged tactics that seemed illogical or needlessly wasteful of human life. This habit of forthright questioning, of prioritizing operational effectiveness over rigid adherence to regulation, frequently put him at odds with his superiors, earning him a record of minor insubordination. Yet this very defiance, this inherent drive to find superior means to overcome tactical obstacles, defined him. Riley was, in essence, an intuitive battlefield engineer, constantly analyzing problems and devising practical remedies, even if those remedies lay far outside established military protocol. His mind wasn't bound by the conventional wisdom of ordnance or approved weaponry. Instead, he constantly assessed the immediate environment, the materials at hand, and the specific challenge presented by the Imperial Japanese Army's formidable fortifications. This disposition, his exceptional physical ability, and his mental aptitude for inventive problem-solving positioned Private Riley, the quiet, skilled outlier, as the unlikeliest candidate to craft a solution where conventional military science had repeatedly faltered. He was a man who understood that sometimes the most sophisticated answer wasn't found in a laboratory or on a drawing board, but in a forgotten tradition, adapted with ingenuity and sheer grit for the exigencies of frontline combat. The M2 fragmentation grenade, a familiar companion for Allied infantrymen, was a deceptively simple device. Its rugged, cast-iron casing, internally grooved to yield around 600 individual fragments upon detonation, contained a lethal charge of TNT. Designed primarily as an anti-personnel weapon, it excelled at scattering deadly shrapnel across open terrain, incapacitating enemy troops in the field. Yet, against the formidable, purpose-built Japanese fortifications on Bougainville, this conventional ordnance proved tragically inadequate. Japanese engineers had perfected defensive structures, employing a cunning blend of natural materials and robust construction. Their pillboxes and bunkers typically featured meter-thick walls of compacted earth, reinforced with dense coconut logs, sometimes faced with concrete or coral rock. When an M2 detonated outside such a redoubt, its primary effect, the high-velocity projection of metal shards, was largely nullified. The earthen layers absorbed kinetic energy, while the timber and rock revetments deflected the remaining fragments harmlessly. The concussive blast wave, while potent in open air, dissipated rapidly against these solid, resilient barriers, leaving the entrenched defenders largely unharmed. The only way to achieve a decisive effect was to get the grenade inside, through a firing port or embrasure. This was an exceedingly hazardous undertaking. A typical machine gun aperture, perhaps 12 inches wide and 8 inches high, presented a minuscule target, especially when spitting continuous streams of fire. Under intense combat stress, accuracy suffered, and the effective throwing range of 25 to 30 yards often left Marine assault teams perilously exposed to enemy fire. Attempting to approach closely enough to guarantee an entry meant braving devastating barrages from Type 92 heavy machine guns and concealed riflemen, often resulting in heavy casualties. This inherent engineering mismatch, a weapon designed for wide-area suppression confronting a target crafted for focused resistance, placed an unbearable burden on the attacking force. The problem wasn't a lack of courage, but a fundamental flaw in the tactical instrument available. The calamitous reality of the Bougainville campaign intensified, with the M2 fragmentation grenades proving cripplingly inadequate against the formidable Japanese defenses. Casualties accrued, and a palpable despair began to permeate the weary American ranks. It was within this climate of mounting frustration, amidst the din of fruitless skirmishes, that Private Jack Riley, consistently an independent thinker, ventured to propose a radically unorthodox solution to his superior, Lieutenant Frank Hargrove. Riley's proposition, articulated with a quiet earnestness that starkly contrasted with its seeming absurdity to any conventionally trained military mind, involved abandoning the customary grenade-throwing technique. Instead, he advocated for the use of javelins. Hargrove, a seasoned officer steeped in modern infantry strategies and the principles of mechanized warfare, responded with sheer incredulity. The very suggestion of reverting to an ancient pre-gunpowder projectile in the crucible of 20th century combat appeared preposterous, almost an insult to the technological advancements defining their era. Yet Riley persisted, meticulously outlining the underlying principles of ballistics and the prospective tactical benefits. He explained that a properly balanced javelin, tipped with an explosive payload, could be propelled with remarkable accuracy and considerable speed, far surpassing the limited reach and precision of a manually tossed grenade. The crucial distinction, Riley stressed, lay in its capacity for deep penetration. Rather than relying on a wide concussive blast outside the fortification or the highly improbable fortune of a direct toss through a minute firing port, a javelin could be launched directly into such an aperture. This would deliver its destructive component deep within the enemy structure, maximizing its effect against the occupants and internal materials. The M2, conversely, was engineered to scatter shrapnel, a method rendered utterly nullified by a meter of compressed earth and resilient coconut logs. The conventional approach was crushing morale. Hargrove, however, remained resolute in his skepticism. Such a suggestion contradicted every foundational tenet he had assimilated at Quantico and during his active service. Established military doctrine emphasized standardization, predictable outcomes, and the systematic deployment of approved ordnance. A makeshift spear, regardless of its clever conceptualization, represented an unmanageable departure from protocol. It was dismissed as an unproven, rudimentary concept, a retrograde step into the distant past of armed conflict, fundamentally incompatible with the sophisticated, synchronized operations required in the Pacific theater. The very notion constituted an affront to the carefully constructed edifice of military engineering and strategic oversight. This immediate rejection, while understandable from an institutional viewpoint, was a shattering setback for Riley's aspirations, compelling him to reformulate his tactical vision. The existing tactics were proving ruinous for the Marines. Facing the dire reality of his comrades falling, Private Jack Riley understood existing armaments offered no answer. His mind, ever seeking novel solutions, turned to the dense Bougainville jungle itself. Amidst the oppressive humidity and constant threat of enemy patrols, he embarked upon a clandestine search for essential components. He meticulously scoured abandoned positions, surveying battlefield detritus, hunting for anything usable. Sturdy bamboo thickets, a common sight across the island, provided ideal material for shafts, long, straight, and surprisingly resilient under stress. For the projectile's business end, the warhead, he required something possessing considerable mass and piercing sharpness. Discarded shell fragments, bent bayonets, or even the hardened steel tips of unexploded Japanese rifle rounds were carefully retrieved. These dangerous elements demanded delicate handling, a testament to his desperation and profound ingenuity. The primary obstacle wasn't merely finding these disparate supplies, but transforming them into a functional offensive implement. He needed a shafted arm capable of flying true over 60, 70, even 80 yards, and subsequently delivering a devastating impact. Weight distribution proved paramount. Too heavy at its point, the item would tumble. Too light, and it would lack sufficient kinetic energy. Aerodynamics, a concept typically explored in sophisticated laboratories, became a crude, empirical art practiced within his jungle workshop. His available tools were rudimentary. A dull machete for shaping the woody grass, a salvaged rock for hammering, perhaps a discarded file for refinement. Working under the cloak of night, away from curious eyes, Riley painstakingly assembled his initial models. Each experimental piece represented hours of meticulous effort, a blend of ancient principles and battlefield pragmatism. He would affix the sharpened metal to the bamboo, binding it tightly with strips of canvas or whatever strong cordage he could pilfer. The evaluation phase was equally perilous. In the dead of night, he would venture to secluded clearings, hurling his creations at makeshift targets, fallen logs, dense foliage, even thick coconut husks. He observed their precise flight paths, the audible thud of their impact, the impressive depth of their penetration. Was the cane too flexible? Was the tip prone to breaking? Each imperfect strike, each failed launch provided invaluable data, guiding his iterative process. He adjusted lengths, refined tips, experimented with various binding techniques. This was engineering under fire, a lone soldier against a fortified enemy, using sheer intellect and remarkable resourcefulness to invent a new way to fight. Lieutenant Hargrove, his face etched with fatigue and frustration, finally relented. He had witnessed too many casualties, too many failed attempts to dislodge the Japanese machine gun nest on Hill 260. "All right, Riley," he sighed, the concession a bitter pill. "One shot, that's all you get. You miss, you go back to point duty." The tension among the remaining Marines, huddled behind meager cover, was palpable. They watched the lone private, Riley, step forward, his custom-crafted bamboo javelin clutched in hand. The distance to the bunker's firing port, barely a slit in the reinforced concrete, was a daunting 80 yards. A single exposed target. Riley ignored the skepticism, the hushed whispers of his comrades. His focus narrowed, the world shrinking to the trajectory of his weapon and that tiny aperture. He took a familiar stance, a pose perfected through countless hours of practice in the forests of Pennsylvania, now adapted for the crucible of combat. His arm coiled, a sudden, powerful snap, and the javelin launched itself from his grip. It whistled through the humid air, a slender, dark projectile silhouetted against the tropical sky. Its flight path was flat, true, a testament to its balanced design and the force of its thrower. In a flash, the improvised spear struck its mark, not with a deflecting clang, but with a sickening thud, its hardened scrap metal tip piercing the narrow opening of the pillbox. The momentum generated by the bamboo shaft's length and mass carried the weighted tip deep inside. A muffled scream, then a chilling silence descended upon the battlefield. The machine gun, which had been spitting death mere seconds before, fell quiet. The crippling effect was immediate and absolute. The bunker, previously an impenetrable fortress, had been neutralized by a weapon considered archaic, yet engineered for a specific modern problem. This was not the erratic explosion of a grenade, often detonating uselessly outside or merely stunning its occupants. Riley's javelin, a marvel of field ingenuity, delivered a concentrated kinetic blow designed for penetration and internal damage. Its sharpened point, propelled with considerable velocity, bypassed the external fortifications that rendered standard fragmentation grenades ineffective. Hargrove, witnessing this astounding display, stared in disbelief. His initial disdain for Riley's unconventional methods evaporated, replaced by a dawning comprehension of the weapon's utility. This single, precise strike had achieved what an entire squad had failed to do for hours, saving untold additional lives. The implications were significant, challenging established tactical norms. The private, previously an eccentric nuisance, had just demonstrated a solution to a critical problem, a tactical puzzle that had cost the lives of too many good men. The silence from the bunker was not merely a temporary lull. It was final. Riley had not just thrown a spear, he had delivered a blueprint for survival, a new method of engagement born from necessity and a keen understanding of applied physics. With Lieutenant Hargrove's hesitant approval, the immediate engineering quandary shifted from individual invention to communal deployment. The scarcity of Riley's ad hoc projectiles, so potent in a singular instance, highlighted a profound logistical hurdle: how to furnish enough javelins to equip even a small fighting force. The initial implements, crafted in secret from jungle growth and discarded metal fragments, were fundamentally prototypes, not standardized armaments for sustained combat operations. Riley, the unlikely artisan, found himself elevated to a critical role, not merely as a combatant, but as a de facto lead engineer and manufacturing supervisor. Under Hargrove's tacit sanction, the quest for suitable raw components intensified. Bamboo, readily available in the Bougainville jungle, became the primary shaft material, chosen for its tensile strength and comparative lightness. For the penetrative tips, discarded bayonet shards, scavenged aircraft aluminum, and flattened steel from ammunition crates were meticulously reshaped, often sharpened using crude abrasives. Each component, from the binding of parachute cord to the weighted lead salvaged from spent rounds, necessitated careful procurement. The design itself underwent rapid iteration. Early javelins, varied in form, now aimed for rudimentary consistency. Riley oversaw modifications that emphasized balance and aerodynamics, crucial for predictable flight. He instructed a small cadre of fellow Marines, often those whose lives had been spared by his initial efforts, in the laborious process of shaping and assembling these peculiar arms. This makeshift fabrication unit, operating clandestinely within the 1st Battalion, 21st Marines, worked tirelessly, transforming refuse into instruments of war, aiming for a consistent throw weight and point of equilibrium. Beyond mere fabrication, Riley's most vital contribution became instruction. He established an impromptu training regiment, educating volunteers in the nuanced art of javelin projection. This wasn't about brute power, it was about precision biomechanics. Riley meticulously demonstrated the proper grip, the coiled tension of the torso, the whip-like extension of the arm, and the crucial follow-through that imparted maximum velocity and accuracy. He taught his spear chuckers, a moniker adopted with a mixture of irony and respect, to synchronize their bodily movements, ensuring the shaft released cleanly from the hand, flying true to its mark. Target practice involved simulating Japanese bunker apertures, often just a small firing slit, from varying distances. Trainees learned to gauge range, compensate for crosswinds, and anticipate trajectory, transforming a primitive weapon into a surgical tool. This rigorous tutelage imbued the Marines with a confidence in their novel armament that few conventional weapons could inspire. The ability to strike a fortified position from 70 or 80 yards, bypassing machine gun fire and reducing the peril of close-quarters grenade assaults, represented a profound shift in their tactical approach against heavily entrenched foes. Yet, for all its combat efficacy, this burgeoning javelin program remained inherently limited. It was an ingenious stopgap, not a comprehensive doctrinal shift. The manual production, reliant on scavenged components and the unique skills of a few individuals, precluded mass deployment across an entire division. Furthermore, the specialized throwing technique demanded considerable practice, meaning not every Marine could wield one effectively. From an institutional perspective, the javelin was a tactical curiosity, an anomaly, rather than a scalable, officially sanctioned munition, posing significant challenges for long-term integration into the Marine Corps' vast logistical and training frameworks. Despite the institutional reluctance, the effectiveness of Riley's javelins on the battlefield was undeniable, and their use spread organically, a testament to practical engineering driven by dire necessity. The spear chuckers, as they were informally known, formed ad hoc units within various companies, their specialized skills coveted during the brutal jungle fighting. One telling engagement occurred on April 21, 1944, during a renewed push on Hill 155. Elements of the 145th Infantry Regiment, U.S. Army, found themselves stalled, suffering severe losses from a particularly resilient Japanese strongpoint. This fortified position, camouflaged meticulously, had already repelled 3 conventional assaults, costing the Americans dozens of men. Standard 60mm mortar fire and bazooka rounds merely chipped away at its exterior, unable to penetrate the thick log and earth construction. It was then that a squad from the 21st Marines, led by a sergeant who had trained under Riley, volunteered their unique capabilities. Moving under the cover of a brief, intense barrage, 2 designated javelin throwers, PFC Sanchez and Private Miller, advanced to within 75 yards. With swift, practiced motions, they launched 2 explosive-tipped bamboo spears. Both projectiles struck the bunker's firing aperture with impressive accuracy, their internal charges detonating within the enclosed space, silencing the enemy position immediately. This decisive action saved numerous lives and allowed the advance to continue. Such instances were not isolated. The javelin, a seemingly primitive weapon, consistently demonstrated its superior tactical engineering in overcoming hardened enemy positions where modern firearms and grenades had faltered. Platoons developed intricate coordination tactics, utilizing machine gun suppression to fix Japanese defenders, while a spear chucker team maneuvered into optimal throwing range. The weapon's range and precision allowed for a standoff capability that reduced direct exposure to machine gun fire, a key factor in diminishing casualty rates for bunker clearing operations across the Bougainville front. Its deployment offered a strategic advantage, allowing Marines to breach defenses with a concentrated, piercing attack. This unexpected, yet highly effective American tactic did not go unnoticed by the Imperial Japanese Army. Intelligence reports from captured positions sometimes mentioned long stick weapons, causing unexpected internal damage to their defenses. Consequently, Japanese engineers began modifying bunker designs, adding more intricate baffles and blast shields to firing ports, and even constructing false apertures to deceive attackers. This arms race, albeit an improvised one, showcased the far-reaching impact of Riley's ingenuity, compelling an enemy to adapt its established defensive doctrine. Ultimately, the javelins provided a deep, operational solution to a critical problem, transforming seemingly impenetrable strongpoints into vulnerable targets. Their success was a powerful testament to the resourcefulness of individual soldiers and the immense value of battlefield adaptation, even when official channels struggled to keep pace with innovation. The devastating efficacy of Private Riley's improvised javelins, particularly following the tragic losses on April 14th, could no longer be disregarded. Lieutenant Hargrove, having personally witnessed their capability, championed the cause to his superiors. Soon, Captain Walsh, commander of Company F, 2nd Battalion, 21st Marine Regiment, arrived to inspect the peculiar implements. He observed Riley, a solitary figure, demonstrating the swift, silent penetration these polearms achieved against muck emplacements. Walsh, a pragmatist, acknowledged the indisputable tactical advantage, even as he grappled with the blatant disregard for standard issue equipment. A palpable tension existed, a conflict between strict military procedure and grim battlefield reality. The Marine Corps' established logistical framework simply lacked a category for bamboo and scrap metal projectiles. Yet, the lives preserved by this unusual weaponry spoke volumes. Captain Walsh, balancing protocol with preserving his men, rendered a difficult judgment. He formally authorized Riley to commence training volunteers from within the company, granting him limited requisitions for raw materials, an unprecedented dispensation for an enlisted man. These initial cohorts, affectionately dubbed spear chuckers, quickly mastered the specialized technique. The program, though far from institutional, expanded rapidly. Its remarkable effectiveness was underscored during subsequent assaults on Japanese strongholds. Major Hendris, commanding the 2nd Battalion, personally observed the spear chuckers neutralize several entrenched positions with precision and minimal collateral damage. The conventional, grenade-centric approaches had consistently resulted in heavy American casualties, often without achieving the objective. Hendris, impressed by the drastic reduction in lost lives, recognized the profound impact. He initiated a recommendation for Private Riley to receive a Bronze Star, a commendation for valor, and advocated for the broader, formalized integration of this novel stratagem. However, the path to official acceptance remained fraught with systemic obstacles. While commanders on the front lines, desperate to safeguard their fighting force, enthusiastically embraced the javelins, the higher echelons viewed them with suspicion. The notion of non-standard unit-fabricated armaments was a logistical and doctrinal nightmare. It bypassed established research and development, procurement, and supply chains, representing a radical departure from regulated military engineering. This administrative rigidity, though designed for efficiency, often stifled truly innovative, field-expedient solutions that arose organically from the dire exigencies of combat. Thus, an unofficial expansion occurred, a testament to its operational merit, yet perpetually shadowed by the organizational reluctance to embrace such an anomalous, yet profoundly life-saving invention. The Javelin program, though officially ignored by the American High Command, was anything but unobserved on the opposing side. Japanese forces, particularly those under General Hitoshi Imamura's 8th Area Army on Bougainville, began to notice a peculiar, almost mystical shift in Marine assault tactics. Their forward observers, initially baffled by the silent penetration of their hardened emplacements, reported a new, more insidious threat. A long-range projectile, bypassing the outer defenses and finding vulnerable points with chilling accuracy. Intelligence gathered from fallen American soldiers, field reports, and even prisoner interrogations slowly pieced together the puzzle. This wasn't standard ordnance, but an ingenious, field-expedient weapon. A simple spear, tipped with explosive or incendiary material, hurled by specially trained Marines. The impact on Japanese morale, especially among the 23rd Infantry Regiment tasked with holding key positions, was considerable. Their previously impervious pillboxes, designed to withstand rifle fire and grenade blasts, were now susceptible to a primitive yet extremely effective form of attack. In response, Japanese engineers and frontline units initiated a period of intense counter-adaptation. Bunker designs, particularly on the perimeter of vital strategic locations like Hill 155, began to evolve. Previously, a single layer of 8-inch diameter logs reinforced with earth was deemed sufficient for many firing positions. Now, these structures were beefed up, often incorporating a double wall construction with thick layers of sand and packed soil between heavy timber. Firing apertures, once simple rectangular slits, were redesigned to be smaller, angled downwards, or shielded by external steel plates, making them more difficult targets for a direct javelin strike. This architectural alteration showcased the significant disruptive power of Riley's innovation. The strategic shift wasn't limited to structural improvements, however. Japanese tactics also adjusted. Instead of static, exposed machine gun nests, which were prime targets for the javelins, they began employing more mobile fire teams, utilizing natural cover and concealed positions, drawing Marines into close-quarters engagements where the javelin's range advantage was negated. The objective was clear: to deny the American spear chuckers the clear lines of sight essential for their unique method of assault. This constant interplay, this military chess match of innovation and counter-innovation, defined the struggle for jungle dominance throughout early 1944. Despite these valiant efforts to adapt, the Japanese High Command faced a logistical challenge that rivaled the Marines' own internal struggles. Implementing wholesale structural changes to hundreds of existing fortifications across a vast island jungle, often under constant threat of bombardment or infiltration, was an immense undertaking. Resources, already scarce due to Allied interdiction, had to be diverted. Steel plates, additional lumber, and the skilled labor required for such modifications were not easily acquired or transported to isolated jungle outposts. This resource drain, though perhaps not immediately calamitous, certainly added another layer of strain to their already strained war effort, underscoring the unexpected reach of Riley's improvised engineering. Ultimately, the Japanese acknowledgement of the javelin's impact, evidenced by their defensive modifications, stands as a testament to its operational validity. It was a clear tactical evolution, born from necessity, executed by ingenuity, and forcing a direct observable response from the very enemy it was designed to defeat. The silent spears of Private Riley had indeed altered the battlefield, even if the official records preferred to remain oblivious. Yet, even as the javelins proved their profound efficacy, saving lives on Bougainville's unforgiving terrain, a different kind of war was being waged, far from the jungle's bloody skirmishes. This conflict, bureaucratic and subtle, would ultimately doom Private Riley's brilliant engineering solution. The Marine Corps, ever an institution of strict procedure, could not simply embrace such a radical, unapproved innovation. Instead, a peculiar document emerged from the shadows of command, a classified memo circulated quietly among senior officers. It acknowledged the sudden appearance of field-expedient standoff weapons, a dry, almost dismissive phrase for devices that had demonstrably breached formidable Japanese defenses. This official dispatch, devoid of specifics regarding their design or the individual who crafted them, served as a veiled nod to their utility, yet offered no formal integration into combat doctrine. Concurrently, a far more personal injustice unfolded. Major Hendress, deeply impressed by the spearchuckers' performance and the immense reduction in unit casualties, had personally recommended Riley for a Bronze Star. This commendation, a testament to his valor and ingenuity, began its journey through the chain of command, a route typically leading to well-deserved recognition. However, somewhere within the labyrinthine channels of military administration, the proposal for Riley's medal simply vanished, a paper ghost in a system unwilling to celebrate an unsanctioned hero. The reasons behind this deliberate suppression were complex, articulated by figures like Colonel Merritt. For Merritt and many in Washington, Riley's javelins represented a procurement nightmare. How could the armed forces standardize, manufacture, and distribute a weapon forged from bamboo and scavenged metal? The challenges of supply chain integration, consistent quality control, and formal training protocols for such an improvised armament were to them insurmountable. The existing system, built on mass production and uniform equipment, simply possessed no framework for incorporating an invention so fundamentally outside its established logistical paradigm. This institutional resistance, prioritizing rigid adherence to process over demonstrated battlefield gains, effectively suffocated a potent combat advantage. The javelins, despite their unparalleled effectiveness against fortified positions, were deemed an anomaly, a temporary expedient rather than a revolutionary advancement. A life-saving engineering breakthrough, born of desperation and genius, became a footnote consigned to the dusty archives of unfulfilled potential. The immense bravery and inventiveness of Private Riley, along with the untold number of lives his improvised projectiles had spared, would remain largely unacknowledged, buried beneath layers of administrative inertia and the relentless march of conventional warfare. When Jack Riley finally returned to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, the war a brutal memory, he carried no medals for his most astounding feat, no official citations for the dozens of lives he unquestionably saved. His inventive engineering, born of battlefield necessity and raw ingenuity, faded into silence, a personal trauma he rarely, if ever, recounted. The skilled private who had crafted those deadly bamboo spears simply melted back into civilian life, his extraordinary contribution an unwritten chapter. The silence surrounding Riley's wartime work, his improvised weapons, became a heavy burden, an unseen weight carried through decades. The Marine Corps, despite unofficial acknowledgments, never formally documented the Javelin program, ensuring its rapid descent into total obscurity. His crucial design, the practical physics of a weighted bamboo shaft, the kinetic energy transfer upon impact, all vanished from official records, lost to the annals of military history. The personal cost of this historical amnesia was deep. To have faced such terrifying odds, to have engineered a solution that demonstrably saved lives on Bougainville, only to be denied any public credit, must have taken an immense toll. Riley bore this experience privately, the memories of Hill 155 and the desperate fight against Japanese bunkers remaining unshared, a solitary secret. However, the enormous logistical complexities of a global conflict often overshadowed individual brilliance. Mass production, standardization, and a consistent supply chain were paramount for the war machine, a stark contrast to Riley's artisanal, field-expedient creations. While undeniably potent, integrating such a unique weapon, built from jungle materials, into the grand operational scheme presented genuine, intense challenges for military planners. It wasn't until 1962, more than 15 years after the war's conclusion, that a diligent military historian, sifting through obscure combat reports and fragmented personal accounts, stumbled upon the first tantalizing references to Riley's javelins. These were not comprehensive engineering schematics, but fleeting mentions of long-range penetration weapons and a particular Private Riley whose methods were deemed highly effective, if unorthodox. Decades later, fragments of this incredible narrative began to surface, discovered by astute historians diligently uncovering obscured military records. Whispers of Riley's unique armament system, initially dismissed by official channels, slowly emerged from the shadows of forgotten history. Riley's brilliant mind, his true genius, lay in practical engineering prowess. He wasn't just a thrower, he became a designer, an artisan of destruction fashioned from wartime necessity. Humble bamboo shafts were meticulously selected, weighted, their tips expertly modified to accommodate repurposed demolition charges. This wasn't mere improvisation, it represented a sophisticated fusion of ancient projectile principles with modern explosive capability. It stood as a profound testament to his innate understanding of ballistics and material science, all under extreme duress during fabrication for specific operational requirements. This clever solution, though temporary, drastically altered the tactical landscape for many embattled Marines on Bougainville. It offered a crucial advantage against entrenched Japanese bunkers, saving countless Allied soldiers. Yet, the very nature of its impromptu genesis sealed its ultimate fate. The institutional armed forces, with their rigid procurement processes and doctrinal adherence, struggled to integrate such an unconventional device. A procurement nightmare, as one senior officer reportedly described it, often highlights how the most effective innovations from the field pose the greatest challenges for large organizations to adopt or legitimize, a regrettable irony rooted in logistical hurdles. The saga of Riley's remarkable javelins provides a significant, enduring message about the crucible of warfare. Genuine inventiveness often blossoms not in laboratories or boardrooms, but amidst the desperate urgency of the battlefield, where ordinary men, like Jack, are compelled to craft extraordinary remedies. His experience underscores the indispensable value of adaptability and the creative problem-solving spirit that defies conventional wisdom. It reminds us that military annals are replete with unsung heroes whose improvised engineering and raw courage reshaped engagements and altered destinies, offering a powerful testament to human resourcefulness under pressure, providing vital lessons for future conflicts.